Hello, I'm Richard Murphy, and welcome to another of our weekly podcasts. This week it's slightly unusual because the person I'm interviewing is somebody who has, behind the scenes, been in every single video that this channel has ever produced. Welcome to Tom Murphy, my son, who has been doing the videography for me ever since we began in April 2024, but is now making his first appearance on the screen to talk about a subject which really matters to him and which has been discussed a lot inside our family environment because of its impact upon young people, his friends, his brother's friends, other young people that we know, and that is how AI is changing the employment scene. Now, I just want to make one point before we start, Thomas. Sorry, I call the Thomas, and absolutely nobody else in the world does,
Not a
and
person,
you'll just
no,
have to
no
listen.
one.
Well, yeah, your mother does, but apart from that, that's it. Everybody else calls you Tom, I know. But there is this point I want to make, and I think it's really important. I read an article in the FT recently. I read articles every day on AI. I take 2 newsletters on the subject, so I'm a bit of a geek. But one of the things that is very obvious is that most companies have no idea what they're going to do with AI, why they're doing AI, and most are doing it because of what is called FOMO, the fear of missing out. All of them think we've got to do AI, even though we don't know what the purpose is, just in case our competitors find that purpose before we do. Nonetheless, the impact on the real world, and in this sense, on younger people, is enormous. So, Tom, we've been talking about this for some time. We've become aware of the impact on younger people. I've seen it through my university contacts. Even employers aren't aware of precisely why they're preferring AI to young people these days. But if employers aren't prepared, where does this leave graduates trying to get their first break into the employment scene?
I think it leaves graduates and people going into university or people thinking about going to university at the moment, no matter what stage they're at, in a really confusing situation because they don't know, I didn't know where I was going to develop. When I was at university a few years ago, I started in, what was it, 2020. AI was not as prevalent. It was kind of starting to become a thing. It was kind of like, a smartphone. People started to have them and then they started appearing everywhere. And everyone seems to be using AI now. I use ChatGPT quite a bit when I feel like I need some data because it's just easier to find. And I might have used it more at uni. I didn't use it much overall just because I didn't trust its efficiency. And it's certainly developed a lot since that period. But because we don't know what is going to happen with AI, how employers are going to use it, what is going to be developed with software, how it might change our employability or what jobs will actually exist. I think it makes graduates graduates or people who are going to graduate unsure as to what they should actually be learning or looking at going into after university. Some people might be thinking that they've started a course that now isn't as relevant as it might have been beforehand. Tech jobs are going to change quite a lot, I think, because lots of data gathering jobs are going to just become irrelevant because AI will, in theory, be able to do them incredibly efficiently and much quicker. And that will obviously completely change that market for what students can actually do.
We've seen the impact of AI on the hiring model of employers. We know that this is happening. I know about it because I've been discussing this with other people in the accountancy sector, particularly in the university accounting sector, where there's a real concern that, as you've just said, that people going to university are suddenly realizing that the courses they're doing may be not as popular as they were because at the end of the day, there might not be a job. You've seen the employer recruitment process firsthand because you did try to get jobs as a trainee accountant
Quite a lot of
before you
places.
decided that wasn't
No luck.
before you decided that wasn't the route
Mm.
you wanted to go down anyway. But there's some clear indication that employers aren't seeing the value in graduates anymore, but also they're putting impediments in the path to employing graduates by making the employment process itself incredibly AI driven and pretty alienating. What's going on here? What do you think?
well, in terms of alienation of graduates, I think that's happening across the board because, at least from my experience, I mean, I did a course in accounting and finance. Well, initially I did it in marketing, but I switched because I thought it was more interesting. And I did a lot of interview processes. I got to the end of quite a lot of them, and you got the bog standard. We liked you, but no further developmental notes. But the first process of all of the interview processes was always fill in, this form. A lot of them, it didn't actually let you put in your CV, so it made it even more arduous. So you have to put it into individual boxes, inevitably, so that they can just put it through a system so that it can say, what have they got? What grades did they get? And it makes their AI system most likely a lot more efficient in entering it, but it's unbelievably arduous, the most boring thing in the world. And then you have the tests that you have to go through, English and maths, and you have to do multiples of those in some instances. I did, and God, they do ruin your day sometimes because you're looking to think about it's got to have to do another maths test. I thought I was done with this in secondary school, but no, I have to do another. And once you get to the end of that, you, in a lot of cases, still come to the position where you're just told, no, we don't want you. Please try again in the future. We'll keep your data on file, but we may get back to you, or you just simply get an email where it just says you are unlucky. And it's incredibly disheartening. And after reading some stuff on this subject or with AI, there's a research paper from the Holt International Business School where they found that something like 98% of employers said they were struggling to fill all of their positions. But of that same group, 89% said that they did not want to use graduates. And this was a study performed over 1,600 people, 800 of whom were in HR, 800 of whom were students, graduates or postgraduates, to see what they thought. And I think it's quite a staggering number that 98% say they're struggling to find people, but 89% won't choose graduates themselves, people who are theoretically qualified, but they don't seem to think that they are when it actually comes to the end of their course. So it makes you think, what is the point in going to university? What's the point in becoming a graduate if no one wants to hire you for the position you actually theoretically became qualified in?
Well, let's talk about this area that you and I have had some experience in. You just applying at jobs at it. Me, a lifetime's career in it, in a sense, accountancy and finance. There's a lot of change that is evident about employment patterns. You were looking for a graduate job, and the data seems to show that isn't what the firms want anymore. They're looking for 18-year-olds or whatever now.
Yeah, I mean, at least from what I saw, I would go to an interview when they were in person. The rare occasion now, most of them are online. You have to log into Microsoft Teams, which is a lovely experience. But you'd have maybe 50 or so 18-year-olds or people who are getting ready to leave college going for a entry position there, and you'd have about 30 or so graduates. But the 18-year-olds were going for 20, 30 positions, and the graduates are going for 10. So they have there's a much larger, group of people who are going to get jobs who are 18, who have theoretically less qualifications than the graduates who are going to a position above them purely because they have this extra experience. They don't need to be taught all the basics, but there are just fewer positions open for them because these employers think that they are going to need a lot of extra work anyway. So why hire more of them who they need to teach new things or teach them in new ways than take a blank slate, put them through the sausage machine because they're more willing to do it. They have less experience than those who might say, why is this the way I need to do this? Or just need to be taught in a different way, as graduates might need to be taught.
You've been looking at some case studies. I know one of the ones you looked at, and you've drawn it to my attention, and I've read it, is about a graduate, I think, from Swansea University who had applied for what was it, 600 plus jobs?
It was,
and hadn't got one yet.
Yeah, it was a ludicrous number. It was something around 600, 700 or so jobs that they had applied for. She had done an accounting finance degree. I can't remember the grade she got to. I think it was a 2-1. But it took her 18 or so months to find a job in a graduate position. Which I think it's incredibly impressive. I would have been discouraged a long time before that. 18 months is a long time, and 600 and something applications. I mean, they wear you down after doing 10 in a day, let alone 600 or so. And I mean, if people are having to go through that, then how does that make them feel about wanting to actually start a profession? Does it disincentivize them from wanting to actually even start in a career? And you could argue that maybe that means that the career wasn't for them. They don't really want it. But should you have to do over 600 applications to start a job that you actually want? I think that kind of, the system seems rigged against you if that's what you're forced to do.
I don't want to depress you, but in 1979, I wrote 3 letters to 3 firms asking for a training position. I was offered all 3, and that was it. I chose one of them and said, "Yeah, off we go. Game
Not
over."
depressing at all.
Well, I'm not saying that my situation was that unusual. I know some who took longer than
Yeah.
me. I don't think I knew anybody who applied for more than 10 jobs before they found one, for certain. But the data actually shows how hard this is. You've been looking at some other data which shows that there are just a lot more graduates looking
Yes.
for jobs at the moment than there are actually advertised graduate jobs available.
Yes.
What's this sort of looking like?
I think it's, well, I think roughly, if I remember correctly, in 2024 at least, there were 17,000 or so graduate jobs in this, some data that I looked at. And they reckoned that out of 17,000 graduate jobs, there were 1.2 million applications as graduates for them. So if my maths was correct when I did check it, that's roughly 70 people per position that you're going for. So even if it's something that you think is, oh, no one's going to be interested in this on average, there's going to be at least 20, even if it's not a popular one, but 70 people per position that you're fighting for, which seems incredibly, unlikely that you're going to get it. Think about standing in a line and saying you're 71 or you're 70 in this queue. You might get to the end of it if you pick the right ball out of a hat. And it's just insane. Also, you have to consider every year we have more graduates. They don't just go away. People don't just leave. People still want to get their graduate positions. And in 2024, at least, roughly 465,000 new graduates entered the market in the UK. So take that figure of 1.2 million applications per 17,000 and add 400,000 onto it. And that might be what it is for 2025. The probability of getting a job goes down even further. So, how do you stand a chance a lot of the time? How do people keep going for it unless they get lucky or they really do stand out from the crowd? But how, once again, can you stand out from the crowd if we don't know how the market is developing, how jobs are developing, how employers think people need to be when they get to a position? How AI will shape all of this is just not known still because it is so new.
Do you think, therefore, that universities are actually now overselling the benefits of going to university and the courses that they're offering? Or would you now say just go and do any course that you feel like and don't bother about applying for something which looks quite relevant, which is what you did? Just go and have fun and then see what happens, because frankly, nobody knows.
I think personally that might be, maybe, because at least for me, I went in and thought, let's do something in business, initially in tourism and marketing, but then I shifted to doing accountancy because I thought this should open doors. There should be an abundance of jobs in this. Surely this can't be wrong. I was thinking about doing history. My A-level history teacher said, I'm really annoyed that you're not doing it. It was the first time a teacher had ever said that to me, and I had to say, sorry, I'm not doing history, which disappointed her a bit. In retrospect, maybe I would have done it. But I think the whole thing of, being told you have to get good grades at GCSE, then A-levels, and then you can go to a good university and then you can get a good job. I think that progression is dead. It's completely different now, how the world has changed. That progression through the academia just doesn't really exist anymore, because people come out of university and they don't know what they're going to do. Maybe because they didn't like their degree, but in a lot of instances, because they don't know where they're going to get a job, because they either do exist and there's too many people, or they don't exist because those jobs just don't exist anymore. Or people don't want to hire because there's so much uncertainty that they don't feel they can take the risk of a new person on. So yeah, I think if you were going to go to university, go for something that you'd want to do, perhaps over something that you think is definitely going to get you a job, because it really might not get you a job these days.
Let me move on to another problem. And I hear everything you say, and I appreciate it. And I think that you're probably right. But I want to move on to another problem, which you've discussed recently with regard to one of your friends who's been applying for jobs, his second job, not his first job out of university, his second job out of university, I think. And he's coming across the problem, which I've heard a lot about, of ghost jobs.
Yes.
What are ghost jobs? What are they? What's the problem?
Well, ghost jobs are just their job applications, application requests put out by companies saying, hey, apply to this position. We've got all this stuff. There might be some details on it about pay. There might not be, depends how much they want to make it enticing. And they're functionally just there to either gather data on who is currently around, see if they actually want to open a position after they've had some applicants, or just to show that they are growing as a company. Because, if you're saying, oh, we're trying to recruit people, then you can say you are growing as a company. Look, we're developing. But it doesn't mean they ever have to actually say, hey, we want you to be in this position. And my friend, I don't think he'd mind being said, he's Ed. He applied to 6, 7, 8 or so jobs that he reckons were ghost jobs, because they just he heard nothing from them, or they said no, and then they continued to be up. And he was looking for a while. He didn't get the pay increase he wanted, and he decided to move. But throughout this entire process, these jobs would still be up. Now, either these places were awful to work at and no one actually wants to work at them, or they have the most stringent policy of hiring, or they were ghost jobs. And I mean, I think he was right that they are, and it's incredibly frustrating. I myself came across at least one firm of accountants, who I won't name, who left a position open for something like 12, 13 months. I applied to them 5 times. They continually said, oh, apply again when we open again, but they never closed that specific roll down. It would end, it would come up again in the same office, in the same part, in the same everything, same details. Now, once again, either they're awful and no one would want to go for them, but with the figures for graduates, surely 10, 20 people were applying for this position and they never accepted it, which is incredibly frustrating, no matter how old you are, no matter what you're doing. But I think that's possibly a growing problem. And in terms of a bit of data in this, there was a bit of research done. I can't remember the name of the actual people who did it, but they found that about 30% of all applications were ghost jobs when they checked, with the quantifier being that they had to be open for more than 30 days. And that did shift dependent on which position you were going into. I think for veterinary services, it was something like 59% of all jobs were ghost jobs. So
Wow.
if you were going to apply for 10 jobs, 4 of them were real, which is it's just nuts. But yeah, I mean, that's a colossal issue, I think. But yeah.
AI is changing the world. We've now been working together for 18 months.
Yeah.
And you seem to be pretty happy about how it's worked out. It wasn't what you originally planned.
Yeah.
But you're certainly getting a more varied experience of some things and development than you probably would have done in any firm of accountants. And one of the things that I've deliberately exposed you to, asked you to be exposed to use is, well, in my case, ChatGPT. That's the search engine, the AI search engine that we normally use. But you had no prior training on that.
No.
And that appears to be completely normal. Graduates actually turn up in jobs now, I gather, in most cases, having never been taught how do you write a AI prompt, how do you actually properly structure your requests, how do you get intelligent information out of this machine, because this is not Google, by the way, guys. This is something quite different from those types of search engine and produces very different results. Is there evidence that AI training is growing now?
I think I'm not sure if there's evidence it's growing, but that's purely because of obviously my situation where we're kind of self-enclosed. But there is certainly, I mean, there are more courses online about saying learn AI and all this stuff. But for graduates, at least, just going back to the HALT bit of data, something like 94% or so of graduates said that if they who had looked into AI, they tried to learn it. They got, after starting their new job, said that it had improved their career prospects within it, that they were getting more praise, they felt better about their work, they were able to understand stuff more, they were seeing faster promotions. So I think it definitely is being incentivized in the workplace, in bigger companies, or however big the companies are. And I'm sure that they are probably promoting more and more AI development. I think that's possibly a place where, at least at a minimum, people should understand ChatGPT, these search engines, to understand how they can be used. If you are a graduate, to screw everything else, if you're not sure what to look at for AI, at least figure those out. I mean, I'm sure most graduates are using ChatGPT or any of the others in some way, and it definitely helps in any form of any starting position, because you can look up some extra new things. You can kind of cheat a bit and say, oh, I need this data quick. How do I get it? You can show off a bit maybe. But I mean, that figure, 94% of people saying, new graduates saying that it has helped them out in their new job. I mean, it must be true. Out of 800 people, that's a hell of a lot of students who say it has helped them. So I think, yeah, there is an increase in this requirement for development in AI skills, and people really do need to learn it.
I read a really quite frightening statistic recently, which said that the average AI query was around 8 or 9 words. Now, that's the same as the average length of a query to Google. Some of the prompts that we use to help in the development of ideas, when we are in particular at the development stage, I've got an outline, for example, of an idea for a video, and you're heavily engaged in this process. I will often dictate a note of up to 1,000 words to start the process. So I know what the video is going to be about. Then we put it through an AI prompt, which is itself, I think, around 400 words. And out of that, we might get the teleprompt slides that we use to actually usually record. There's no teleprompt slides today, but there very often are, to make sure that basically I stay on track from beginning to end through the video, because otherwise, as you discovered, I had the habit of wandering off on a little tangent every now and again. So these things help enormously. Now, that doesn't mean to say AI writes this, but the fact is that most people don't understand that actually AI is a really quite complicated tool. And if you're going to own it, you've got to be the master of it, not the servant of it. So I reiterate that point that you're just making, that I think people can really learn to use it to great advantage, but only if they're trained. And I'm still not hearing about much of that training being put forward at universities, because all I hear from most people at universities is that they're terrified that if the students are really good at AI, it'll get even harder to examine them. So therefore, actually, universities aren't preparing people for work in AI at all, which is really odd. So in a sense, is AI a job killer or a job creator? I guess that follows on from where I was asking or making that point. Is this just creating lots of junior roles where some junior people could be taught to use an AI prompt about which they don't need to know very much? Or is it actually something which those who've got initiative and skill might be able to develop something really quite significant? I mean, I know that you and your brother are looking at creating a YouTube channel. Don't discuss the details. They're not to go out, I think, as yet. So we won't explain what that might be. But AI could play a serious role in helping you to develop all the plans for that. Is this something which is going to create jobs, and in your case, particularly create an opportunity, or is it something that is just de-skilling work?
I think it's a mix. It's certainly I think if you don't figure out how AI works, it will definitely leave you behind, and people have to figure out how it works to keep up now, and also because it will inevitably allow you to develop in new ways. You can gather data faster. If someone says, hey, I need this data now, you can say, okay, I actually have it in 5 minutes, instead of in the past it would have taken you a lot longer. When I try and get references for work, for now, if we do any quotations, I can ask ChatGPT and say, hey, here's the rough outline of it. Can I have a Harvard quotation for this? And can you tell me exactly where it's from? And it can tell me in 5 seconds. In the past, that would have taken me 10, 15 minutes at university, when I wasn't using AI. So I think in that respect, it helps your work, it can keep you relevant, and it can definitely help you develop new ideas, even if it only gives you an outline. As with the outline there, you can develop it a lot more. But on the other hand, I think it definitely is killing jobs for the entry positions, because companies want to save money. They don't want to spend as much on trainees, because trainees do cost a lot of money. And they see AI as being able to fill these jobs in a much cheaper way. I think it's of the big four, I think it's KPMG, in a report I read, said that they had reduced their hiring of graduates by 29% in 2024 compared to 2023. Wow. And I think it was KPMG, it might be one of the other three. All of them, no matter who One of them was as low as 6%. They'd reduced it by. One was 11%, if I remember correctly. But they all reduced their hiring base from 2023 to 2024 by a significant amount. And those will be the most menial jobs. They'll be, go and find this data, enter this data into a spreadsheet, because AI can do it, and it will be cheaper for them. It'll take less work. They won't have to hire them, make sure they're okay, have supervisors, have people check their work, manage training, when you can tell the AI exactly what you want it to do with a long enough script, or use a program that's been developed with AI. So I think it will make people, it will and it is making it harder for people to start careers on the basis that most entry-level jobs that lots of people have are fairly menial compared to what they can do later on. And companies don't want to pay a lot of money for that menial job.
It's interesting you say that, because there's a chap who lives relatively near where I am. And we were talking recently about his marketing company. And that's interesting in the context that you did originally think of doing marketing. And I don't think you've heard this story before from me, but he was talking about the fact that his business is basically now totally transformed. They are actually writing AI prompts to help their clients do their own marketing.
Sure.
And so they've become a tech company. They've ceased to be a marketing company. But the difficult thing is that in practice, they don't need any juniors anymore. The thing that worried him enormously was that if they didn't need any juniors anymore, he wasn't sure how, when the time came that he comes to retire, which isn't yet in this chap's case. I know that. I mean, I would say he's at least 20 years younger than me. So he's probably in his 40s. But he was saying, what happens when I get to retirement age? There's nobody coming up to fill my shoes. So look, a couple of questions that really come out of that comment and the stuff that we've talked about. What is the future of work in this case? Are we going to have a two-tier workforce, those who are forced to use AI and have very little initiative, and those who are highly trained and who are lucky enough to get into a position where they get that opportunity, but they will be few and far between? And what does that suggest now to, well, the people who are a bit behind you, who are at university? What mindset do they need, and what should they be prioritizing? What skills do they need to develop to live in this world where AI is incredibly useful? Although, and I go right back to the beginning, most employers don't quite know what it's useful for yet.
Well, I think it will create a definite inequality. People who are not with it, as it were, will be left behind. And that won't explicitly be young people. Obviously, if you're people who have left university quite a while ago, if you're 30, if you're 40, you're still going to be working for quite a while. And AI is developing incredibly quickly. 5 years ago, you heard about it a lot less, and now it's everywhere. So what will it happen in 20 years, when if you're 30, you don't be 50. If you're me, you'd be, 43. So if anyone does not keep up, they will be in a definite, unequal playing field to the rest of the people. But as you said, if people can't actually join the workforce at all, how will they develop new skills as well, even if they can use AI? So I think it puts everyone in this question of, though I may be good at AI, has that meant that now that's irrelevant? I can do it, but the AI can already do it when someone else can ask it to do. So can they get a job anyway? So though it might be uneven, and this sounds a bit ranty in my head, though it might be a bit uneven, people might not be able to get the job in the first place. So it's hard to say what people actually need to learn, because even if you know it and someone else knows it, they can already ask the AI to do it. So will they even ask you to answer the question in the first place? So yeah, I mean, that's a very complicated question, because you just don't know what's going to happen in the future. Bluntly, I can only guess, but I can only guess as one man in the world. But yeah, it's not a great answer to that one, to be honest.
Well, it is, because it says to me that what you're talking about is that everybody needs to keep on top of their game. Because whatever the next job is, most people are going to have another job. Let's be honest. You're not going to be my videographer forever.
No.
Because if you do plan on that, by the time you're 67, I'm going to be looking kind of ancient on screen. So something's going to change between now and your retirement date. But what I've been impressed by in your case, and this is genuine, you don't know this question's coming up. We didn't prepare this one in any way. You've done quite a lot of self-motivated training over the last 18 months.
Yeah.
You've learned a lot about cameras, a lot about how to make a YouTube. You learned a lot about photography in general, but you've also learned about a lot of IT, which you'd never really had to
Yeah.
come across before, including AI, but not just AI, of course. Your recommendation, because in this, you certainly, I know, used, I think, Udemy quite a bit for
Yeah.
training, and you bought courses there, which you found of value.
Mm.
What else have you been doing? I mean, did you just look at YouTube, or is there more to it than that?
I mean, for me, the way that I learn just is usually by visual and audio stimulation. So I'm not sure, it's YouTube and it's Udemy. And if I know someone, one of my mates online, I ask them, hey, can you show me how to do this, or can you give me some recommendations? I mean, the benefit of having loads of mates all across the world is that every now and again you find out one of them is an audio technician and you get to ask them some questions, which is pretty useful. But that's generally what I do. Obviously other people find it easy to read, but or do other things, but I just kind of watch, listen, do as I see it. And that's how I remember things. But that's just how I kind of learn new data. But that's how I've done most of it. It's been, okay, I've seen this, let's give it a shot. If it works, it works. I remember it for next time. If it doesn't, I find a new way to do it. Because obviously sometimes you get videos that ramble on for 73 hours and they don't tell you the answer until the very end, because that's how they get views.
I thought you were describing ours then. I was thinking we haven't done a single 73-hour video.
Well, yeah.
I know we've reached 23 minutes, by which point you're usually waving at me to say, shut up,
Yeah.
and things like that. But yeah, okay, so that wasn't a criticism of me on this occasion. But I'm going to take a point out of that, which is you do have to embrace the idea that the job is not just what happens 9 to 5 or whatever, but there's a learning process. And anybody who it's going to be living in this fluid world of remarkable change in the employment environment at the moment has to really stay on top of where we are.
Yeah.
We've been talking for half an hour or so. I think we've covered a lot of ground. I think a lot of that will be news to some people, in particular, this thing about ghost jobs and this difficulty of the ratio of the number of applications to the probability of success. I mean, it really is an immensely difficult time, and it's unsurprising that there are a lot of people coming out of universities with good quality degrees. And let me stress, I know what degree Thomas has got, and it's a good quality degree. And I think that anybody who's watching this video will realize that you're pretty lucid in front of a microphone, and I'm sure would have been in an interview. And so you aren't showing obvious signs of difficulty in getting your message across. So in that case, you aren't an obvious person who should be having a difficulty getting employment. And yet it was not easy in your case. And you actually experimented elsewhere. And then we decided to experiment, and things developed from there. But the point I'm making is that this is very hard. And I don't think at the moment that most people who are much further up the employment tree understand just how much of an impact AI is having on younger people and their employment prospects and the way in which they view work. I don't think most of them understand what their companies are really thinking is the AI policy. In fact, I think AI policy, as opposed to AI hype, are ridiculously far apart. I mean, you can almost say that companies used to do a lot of greenwash, and they've given that up at the moment, which is almost a shame. I almost regret the departure of greenwash. I wish they were still doing it. But at least that might indicate they might do something real one day. But in the case of AI, we're seeing AI wash. They're talking lots and lots of hogwash very often about AI,
Well,
but they don't know what.
That and asking any customer service now is, hey, use our new AI chatbot. Then it will answer the question you want.
I mean, I think there are certain industries where, like coding, as you mentioned, about IT coding and about some forms of accounting and AI chatbots in customer services. I think those are obvious areas where it's going to happen. Yeah. But there are plenty of areas where you just wonder, how the heck? I mean, you and I both know that we could supposedly go and turn on an AI program and create a video. We also know that the resulting product would be complete and utter, I'm going to use the technical term now, crap.
Yeah.
Fundamentally different, that it just isn't possible to generate a good video like that. And people can tell them from a mile off and they don't watch them.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, you've got to embrace the ideas, and we are embracing the ideas of AI. We're using them quite proactively in our video production, a bit in the blog, and it helps us do research. There's no question about that. I do find it a really useful thing. I mean, one of the things I quite often do is I look at a long article in a newspaper and think I haven't got time to read that, and I just tell AI produce a TLDR, too long, didn't read, except give me what I haven't got in the newspaper, which is the 150-word version of your 2,000-word long read in The Guardian today that I didn't have a chance to look at. So these things matter. But Tom, look, and I actually managed to say it.
Yeah.
Tom, look, thanks for discussing this. I think this is a really live issue.
Yeah.
And I suspect that because of what we're doing, we're more aware of AI than many people in reality, because it's actually at the cutting edge of our job at present. And because we are learning our processes. I mean, let's be honest, neither of us knew that much about videography 18 months ago or producing YouTube.
I knew nothing.
We went into it rather blind, let's be blunt. We seem to have been reasonably successful almost despite that. But because we did use training and AI and all sorts of things to help us on the way. I mean, countless hours both of us have spent talking and discussing this stuff. And I do mean countless. But I look forward to carrying on that process with you because I think it's been incredibly helpful. But thank you also for just illuminating that point about the whole of the jobs market and the research you've done to show just how difficult it is. We're living in a period of change. You're going to live through a lot more change probably than I've seen in my career. And I could never have imagined when I set out in 1979 that I would end up as a YouTube creator, because that was something that nobody could have imagined in 1979. It was literally beyond imagination. So what are you going to be talking about when you do this interview with somebody in 40 plus years time? Who knows?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's AI. It's going to change the world. It is changing the world. It is changing employment. The advice is stay on top of it, learn about it, and let's move on. Thanks a lot, Tom.
Cheers. Thank you.